everyone, and welcome back to Brush and Bubbles. If you are new to our channel, then welcome to the family. We bring you new painting tutorials for you to get creative from the comfort of your own house. We have a super fun tutorial for you all today because you can either do it by yourself and create 2 paintings for your house, or you can grab your best friend and paint 1 each. So the great thing about this is you can do 2 paintings in completely different colour palettes, and you can also use any size canvas that you like. So we are going to be painting a desert scene today, and I'm going to be painting on these 2 tiny little cute canvases. So the idea is that our landscape is going to join up and meet the other canvas and go all the way along. And then when you have it on display, you can just simply either pop them right next to each other or have a little bit of a gap. And if you're painting it with someone else, you can keep one in your home and your best bud can keep one in their home. So let's jump straight into the tutorial, and I'm just going to talk you through what you'll need to create these paintings at home. First of all, pick your canvas size of choice. You'll then need some paintbrushes. I have got a square shaped one, a smaller one, and then a teeny tiny one, but depending on the size of your canvas, you can use any size brushes that you want. You'll also need some kitchen towel, a pot of water, a palette to pop all of your paints in, and some acrylic paints. So I'll be talking you through the paint colours that I'm using and the way I'm mixing them up for my paintings, but please feel free to go rogue and use any shades or colours that you wish for both of the paintings. I would also recommend just covering your table with a tablecloth or old newspaper. So before we jump into our paintings, just make sure you're nice and set up, you're nice and comfortable and relaxed. You can pop on some music, go grab yourself a drink, and then we will get started with our paintings. So I've got a whole array of colours in my palette. I've got some black, green, blue, yellow, red, white, orange and pink. To start with, I'm just going to take my little brush and loosen the bristles in the water. To start with, I just need to make a really light colour that I can use to draw. So I'm going to pick up some white and I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of yellow to it and give it a good mix. It's also quite a nice idea just to add a drop of water to this paint, just so it becomes a little bit more fluid when we come to painting on our canvas. So to start with, I'm just going to map out where I want my sand dunes and hills to go, and you can have as many or as little as you like. I think I'm going to go for 3 or 4, so I'm just going to start with my top one and just draw it in, just using a light touch. I'm just going to add a little mound on either side. I'm then going to wrap it around either side of the canvas. Picking up some of the same colour, I'm now just going to draw in my second sand dune. Again, just using quite free motions with your hand, and you can just give them a little bit of a wobble. Now just going to draw in my third sand dune, and then one more at the very bottom. Once you're happy with that, you can now move on to the fun bit, which is deciding what colours you want to do for your painting. So I'm going to start with the sky, and then we're going to work down and colour in our sand dunes before we move on to doing more details. So I'm going to go for a dusty, sort of very neutral pink colour. So for this, I'm just going to pick up one of my bigger brushes, and I'm just going to mix up that colour now. So I'm going to start with white as my base because I want to keep my paint shade very pastel. And then to this, I'm just going to add a little bit of red and then a little bit of yellow. And I'm going to give it a good mix and see what I end up with. This is actually a lovely colour, but I do want to lighten it up slightly. So I'm just going to add some more white. And because I want to keep with a more neutral palette, I just want to add the tiniest bit of black to this, just to make it slightly more earthy. So I know that this is scary, but I would just pick up one of your smaller brushes and just add the tiniest little bit of black into that mixture if you also want to make it more of an earthy tone. So I'm happy with that shade, but I just want to lighten it up even more. So I'm just adding a little bit more white and giving it a good mix. Now that I'm happy with this colour, I'm just going to move over to my canvas and fill in this whole section of the sky with this shade, covering up any of the white canvas underneath, and I'm also going to wrap it around the sides and the top when I get to them. I'm now going to move on to making the colour for my first sand dune. So I'm going to go for more of a peachy tone. So I just want to add a little bit more yellow, and I'm going to keep this as my base. So I'm just going to add the yellow to this corner here. And again, because I want to keep the earthy-like tone to this painting, I'm just going to add the tiniest bit of black using my small brush, dabbing it in, then mixing that up. So I'm just going to add a little bit more yellow to this, and then a little bit more white and red. Then whenever you're happy with your first sand dune, you can just go ahead and fill it in. When you get to the area where the sand dune meets the sky, you just want to overlap the sand dune with the sky. So I would focus more on the bottom section first, leaving that little gap at the top here so that we can then go ahead and fill it in afterwards, just to give the sky a little bit longer to dry. Whenever you're ready, you can start mixing up the colour for your next sand dune. So I'm just going to use this as my base, but I'm going to add a little bit of pink to it and a little bit of orange and give it a good mix. So I just want to lighten up slightly, so I'm going to add some white. And again, picking up my smaller brush, I'm just going to add the tiniest amount of black to it as well. As soon as you're happy, you can go ahead and fill in your next sand dune. As soon as you're ready, you can mix up your next shade. So I'm going to keep the colour I've got on my brush, and I'm just going to mix up my next colour here, and I'm just going to add a little bit of white and a little bit of orange to it. Then I'm going to go ahead and fill in my next sand dune. Whenever you're ready, you can mix up the last shade for your last sand dune. So I'm going to start with some red. I'm going to add a little bit of white to it, a little bit of yellow, and then I'm just going to add the tiniest bit of blue to this as well and give it a mix and see what I end up with. Also going to add the tiniest bit of black. I'm then going to fill in my last sand dune with this shade. We're now going to leave our painting to dry for about 10 minutes. And while you're waiting for it to dry, you can give your brushes a good wash. When our painting's nice and dry, we can now move on to making the colours for our cactus. So with my small brush, I'm just going to start with a little bit of white as my base, and then I'm going to add some green and some blue and give it a good mix. I'm now going to add a little bit more green to the mixture and also a little bit of yellow. And then because I want to keep with the earthy tone, I'm just going to add a tiny bit of black to this as well. So I just want to brighten up the shade a little bit more, so I'm going to add a tiny bit more yellow to the mixture and a little bit more white. So I'm just going to scrape off any excess paint on the side of my palette so I haven't got too much on my brush. And then I'm just going to move over to my painting and decide where I want my cactus to go. So I'm going to probably pop it on the middle section of the sand dune, so on the second sand dune up. And I'm just going to draw a long sort of oval shape coming from the top of this sand dune all the way up. Don't worry if your cactus is a little bit wobbly, that is perfectly fine because we want it to look nice and natural. So once you've got that main shape in, you can just go ahead and fill it in with the same colour. Once you've got the body in, you can then draw in where you want the first arm to be. So this is going to jut out from the side of the cactus. And again, just round the top of the arm as well, and then just bring it back round to meet the body. Once you're happy with that, you can fill it in. Once you've done that arm, you can then do the other arm on the other side. So again, just drawing in that oval shape at the top and then bringing it around to meet the body. Filling it in when you're ready. Now this is your chance to amend your cactus if you want to. So if you want to bring the body slightly higher, you can do that, or the arms. Just have a little look and decide if there's anything you want to do to your cactus. And there you have your cactus painting. Once you're happy with this painting, just clean off some space on your palette, and then you can grab your other mini canvas and just place it next to this one. What we want to do now is we just want to link up where our sand dunes finish on this one so we can carry it on, so that when you put them together on the wall, they sort of sit nicely and they match. So I'm going to go for a different colour palette for this one. I think I'm going to go for more greeny blues, but still keeping that earthy tone. But you can do any sort of shades that you like. You might even want to carry on these colours onto this canvas as well. So to start with, using my small brush, I'm just going to mix up a very, very light green shade. So I'm just going to start with some white as the base, and then I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the green that I had for my cactus and give it a good mix. So with this shade, I'm then just going to carefully line the two canvases up so they match. And then I'm just going to carefully fill in where this sand dune ends. And then going to do the same with the other 3 sand dunes. Once you're happy with that, just move your other painting to the side, and we just want to follow these lines around the edges of the canvas like we did with our first painting. So this is the fun bit. We can just pop down our smaller brush and pick up another brush, and we can decide what kind of shades and colours we want to do for our sky. So I think I'm going to go for quite a muted neutral blue shade. So for that, I'm just going to pick up some white, add a little bit of blue, and then again picking up my smaller brush that I'm just going to wash off quickly. I'm then just going to pick up a tiny bit of black just to keep that neutral theme going through this painting as well. When you're happy with your sky colour, you can just go ahead and fill in that top section, remembering to do the top and the sides. When you're happy with your sky, you can now move on to doing the colour for your top sand dune. So I might actually go back to that first sort of duck shell greeny blue colour I had, but I'm just going to mix up a little bit more. So I'm just going to pick up some more white and then add a little bit of blue and a little bit of green to it and give it a good mix. As soon as you're happy with your shade, you can just go ahead and fill in that top sand dune, remembering to also paint the sides. If your sky is still a little bit wet, you can just do the same thing as we did with the first painting, leave a little gap, and then you can go back in and fill that in after the sky is slightly drier. As soon as you're ready, you can then move on to mixing up the colour for the next sand dune. So I'm just going to make this more of a blue shade. So I'm just going to add some more blue to this corner. But I'm also just going to pick up a little bit of black as well and add that back in there. Whenever you're ready, you can then just fill in that next sand dune. For my next shade, I just want to add a slightly more lilac shade to my painting. So I'm just going to start with some white as the base, add some blue to it, and then also a little bit of pink. Whenever you're ready, you can fill in that next sand dune. I'm now going to mix up the very last shade, and I'm going to have a little bit of an experiment here with my colours. I'm going to pick up some of this green that I had for my cactus, and I'm going to mix in a bit of this purple just to see what we sort of get. Might also just add in a tiny touch of yellow to it as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill in that last sand dune. So we're now just going to leave the painting to dry for about 5 minutes. When our painting's dry, we just want to wash off our little brush and make sure it's nice and clean. We're now going to move on to adding a tiny little moon or sun to our sky. So it's totally up to you what colour you want to do this. I sometimes suggest starting with white, drawing it in, and then if you want to add a colour on top, you can just let it dry and then you can add the shade that you want on top just to make it pop. I'm going to start with some white paint and I'm just going to draw in a tiny little circle over this side of my painting. I'm then going to carefully fill it in. So like I mentioned, you can either keep it white or you might want to add a colour on top. What I do suggest is just popping your other painting next to it and you can sort of decide what shade you'd like to do. I think it looks quite nice with the white because it almost looks like the moon, like this is the daytime and that's the nighttime, so I'm going to leave mine like that. As soon as you're happy with your final details for your painting, you then have your 2 desert landscapes, which simply fit together like so. So you can have them displayed together in your own home, or like I mentioned before, you can keep one and your best friend can keep theirs. Equally, if you want to, you could gift the one you've done to your best friend. Lucky, lucky them. I hope that you all enjoyed that video. If you did, don't forget to give us a little thumbs up, and if you have any questions at all, you can just pop them in the comments below. Until next time, bye everyone!